You've done it. I've done it. Every man reading this has done it. The thumbnail appeared, attractive woman, suggestive pose, promising something your brain registered before your conscious mind could evaluate. You clicked. Not because you decided to click, because something older than decision-making took over. The click happened and then you noticed you'd clicked. Someone made money from that click. Someone designed that thumbnail knowing you'd click. Someone tested dozens of variations to find the exact combination of pose, expression, and revealed skin that maximized the clicking. Your predictability was measured, optimized against, and monetized. You were the product being sold to advertisers, and your attention was purchased with an image calibrated to bypass your rational mind entirely. This isn't accusation, this is observation. The systems built to capture male attention through female sexuality have become so sophisticated, so pervasive, so integrated into every platform and product category that noticing them requires active effort. They've become background radiation, the normal way things are. Questioning them feels strange because they're everywhere, which is exactly how conditioning works. Today, we're mapping the machinery, how corporations, platforms, and individuals have engineered systems that convert male sexual attention into revenue. Not to moralize about whether this should happen, it's happening. The question isn't whether it's right. The question is whether you understand how completely you've been incorporated into a system designed to extract your money through your desire. Understanding the mechanism doesn't necessarily free you from it, but operating within a system you understand differs from operating within one that's invisible to you. At minimum, you'll see what's happening. What you do with that seeing is your business. The advertising foundation was laid decades ago. Sex sells. The phrase became cliché because the observation became universal. Marketers discovered early that sexual imagery captures attention more reliably than almost any alternative. The discovery wasn't subtle. It was dramatic enough that entire industries restructured around it. Beer advertisements pioneered the explicit connection. The product, alcoholic beverage consumed primarily by men, got wrapped in imagery of attractive women who seemed to exist in proximity to the beer. The logic was never that beer attracted women. The logic was that male attention captured by women would attach to the beer through association. See woman, feel desire. See beer, feel something adjacent to desire. Buy beer. The formula spread everywhere. Fast food chains put attractive women in commercials for hamburgers. Gum advertisements featured beautiful people whose gum chewing somehow connected to their attractiveness. Soda brands associated their sugar water with beautiful bodies. Automotive companies draped cars in women as if the vehicles came with them. The product category didn't matter. The formula worked regardless. The products themselves often disappeared from memory while the imagery persisted. Studies confirmed what intuition suggested. Viewers remembered the attractive woman long after forgetting what she was supposedly advertising. The advertisement failed at literal product promotion while succeeding at something else. Brand association with desire. The feeling attached even when the specific product didn't. Shock value amplified the effect. Advertisements pushed boundaries specifically because boundary pushing generated attention and controversy. The controversy itself became advertising. People discussed the provocative ad, spreading awareness far beyond paid media placement. The outrage was feature, not bug. Offense drove engagement that polite advertising couldn't achieve. Certain product categories found natural alignment. Perfume and cologne advertising made the subtext explicit. The promise wasn't that the fragrance smelled good. The promise was that the fragrance would make you attractive to beautiful people. The advertisements depicted outcome, desire, pursuit, romantic success, and positioned the product as causal agent. Spray this chemical compound, receive sexual attention. Old Spice built an entire brand resurrection on this formula. The absurdist humour wrapped a serious promise. Use this product and become the kind of man attractive women want. The humour provided cover for the message, making it palatable to audiences who might reject straightforward claims. But the message survived the humour. The man your man could smell like was the man who got the woman. Fashion advertising operated similarly. Calvin Klein's provocative campaigns sold jeans by selling the bodies wearing them. Victoria's Secret sold underwear by selling the fantasy of the women modelling it, and by extension, the fantasy of accessing women who looked like that. The garments were incidental. The desire was the product. The garments were just the transaction mechanism. Tom Ford pushed further, using imagery so explicitly sexual that the products became almost irrelevant. The advertising was the point. Perfume or sunglasses or whatever was officially being sold existed as justification for the imagery that actually captured attention. The product served the advertising rather than advertising serving the product. The science of male attention got formalized. Researchers confirmed what marketers intuited. Male attention follows predictable patterns. Certain visual stimuli produce reliable responses that operate beneath conscious control. Eye-tracking studies mapped exactly where men looked and for how long. The data converted intuition into precision targeting. Studies demonstrated measurable behavioral effects. The hitchhiking experiment, where researchers varied the apparent breast size of female hitchhikers and measured male stopping rates, showed that physical attributes directly influenced male behavior. The men stopping weren't consciously calculating. They were responding to stimuli that triggered responses they didn't choose and often couldn't articulate. This predictability became the foundation for entire industries. If you know where eyes will go, you know where to place advertisements. If you know what images will capture attention, you know what thumbnails to create. If you know what stimuli produce desire responses, you know how to engineer products and presentations that activate those responses reliably. The predictability transformed exploitation from opportunistic to systematic. Individual marketers making lucky guesses evolved into industries running continuous optimization experiments. Every click, every view duration, every purchase got fed back into systems, refining their understanding of exactly what triggered male response. The conditioning became algorithmic. Physical spaces got engineered around the formula. The restaurant business model represents the concept in physical form. Hooters built a billion-dollar enterprise on a simple insight. Men will pay more for food served by attractive women in revealing uniforms. The food was adequate. The real product was the environment. Proximity to attractive women who were contractually obligated to be friendly. The model replicated. Twin Peaks, tilted kilt, bone daddies. Each variation on the theme confirmed the underlying economics. Men would drive past dozens of restaurants offering equivalent food to eat at establishments, offering inferior food plus attractive servers. The premium paid for the servers substantially exceeded any premium that food quality could command. The women understood the transaction even when it remained officially unspoken. Tips correlated with attractiveness, with flirtation performance, with the management of male attention that made customers feel special while extracting maximum payment. The servers optimized their behavior just as the corporations optimized their hiring and uniforms. Everyone understood what was being sold. The food was just the excuse. Controversy became its own marketing channel. Shock imagery and unexpected context generated attention that conventional advertising couldn't buy. Magazine covers pushed boundaries specifically because boundary pushing produced purchase spikes. The controversy drove discussion. The discussion drove awareness. The awareness drove sales. The sequence was reliable enough that engineering controversy became standard practice. Time magazine discovered this with covers that generated outrage. The outrage produced television segments discussing the cover. The segments produced social media debates. The debates produced awareness that penetrated demographics the magazine couldn't otherwise reach. The controversy cost nothing and generated millions in equivalent advertising value. The calculation became explicit in editorial meetings. How provocative can we be? What will generate maximum controversy without crossing into boycott territory? Where's the line that produces discussion rather than cancellation? The publications weren't pursuing controversy accidentally. They were optimizing for it deliberately, with sexual imagery as reliable controversy fuel. Digital platforms amplified everything exponentially. The thumbnail economy emerged from measurable reality. Sexualized thumbnails outperformed alternatives. The data was clear enough that creators who initially resisted eventually capitulated. The woman in revealing clothing generated clicks that the informative but visually boring alternative couldn't match. The algorithm rewarded what users clicked. Users clicked what triggered them. The system selected for triggering. Content creators learned through iteration. The video with the attractive woman in the thumbnail got more views than the identical video with a neutral thumbnail. The creator who wanted views, and views meant revenue, meant growth, meant algorithm favor, had to use what worked. Principled resistance meant algorithmic death. Compliance meant survival. Personal experience confirms the pattern. Creators who've tested both approaches report consistent results. The sexualized thumbnail pulls numbers that neutral alternatives can't approach. The content behind the thumbnail might be identical. The content might have nothing to do with sex. Doesn't matter. The thumbnail captures attention. The attention generates views. The views generate revenue. The system selects for whatever captures attention. Gaming discovered the monetization potential early. Video games learned that character design drove sales independent of gameplay quality. The female characters in fighting games got progressively more sexualized as developers realized what players responded to. The jiggle physics, the revealing costumes, the camera angles that lingered. These weren't accidents. They were deliberate design choices based on what testing revealed about player preferences. The Witcher series sold millions of copies. The gameplay was good, the story was engaging. The female characters were also designed to maximize male attraction. Triss and Yennefer weren't dressed practically for their dangerous world. They were dressed to appeal to the players controlling Geralt. The romance mechanics let players pursue these characters. The pursuit drove engagement. The engagement drove sales. Overwatch understood this from launch. The character roster included powerful male characters and attractive female characters, whose power somehow required skin-tight suits. Tracer's over-the-shoulder pose, Widowmaker's everything. The designs weren't optimized for combat functionality. They were optimized for player attraction. The game sold itself on these characters before players experienced a single match. Nier Automata made the subtext explicit. The protagonist wore a revealing outfit that the game's camera frequently emphasized. The director, when asked about this, simply acknowledged that he liked attractive women. The honesty was refreshing. The design drove sales that gameplay alone couldn't have achieved. Players discovered 2B's appearance before they discovered what buttons to press. Bayonetta built an entire franchise on sexualized presentation. The protagonist's design, her movements, her everything, calibrated to appeal to male players. The gameplay was legitimately excellent, but the gameplay existed within packaging designed to maximize male attraction. The excellence and the packaging worked together. Neither alone would have produced the results. Stellar Blade generated controversy precisely because it delivered what players wanted while critics objected. The protagonist's design prioritized attractiveness over realism. Players responded enthusiastically. The game sold. The controversy generated additional attention. The formula worked exactly as decades of precedent suggested it would. Mobile gaming refined exploitation into art form. Gacha games represent the culmination of everything the industry learned. These games, primarily from Asian developers who understood the market without cultural hesitation, built entire economic models around collecting attractive female characters. The gameplay was often secondary. The characters were the product. The randomized acquisition was the monetization mechanism. Genshin Impact generates billions in annual revenue. The core loop is simple. New characters get released. The characters are attractive. Players want the characters. Acquiring the characters requires either extensive grinding or payment. Most players pay. The payments, aggregated across millions of players, produce revenue that dwarfs traditional game sales. The character designs are deliberate. The female characters feature proportions, outfits, and animations calculated to maximize appeal. The jiggle physics on characters in a game rated for teenagers tells you everything about the actual audience being targeted. The developers know what they're selling. The players know what they're buying. The transaction is clear to everyone except perhaps regulators. Zenless Zone Zero pushed further. The character designs became more explicitly provocative. The animations became more suggestive. The monetization became more aggressive. Players spent thousands chasing characters whose primary attribute was attractiveness. The gameplay existed to justify the spending. The spending existed to acquire the characters. The characters existed to trigger desire. The spending patterns defy casual explanation. The stereotype suggests teenagers spending lunch money. The reality involves adults spending mortgage payments. The whale phenomenon, where a small percentage of players provide the majority of revenue, reveals adults with disposable income directing that income toward digital characters, not confused children. Grown men making choices about where their money goes. The amounts stagger. Players spending tens of thousands of dollars on single games. 6 figures across gaming careers. Money that could have purchased homes, funded retirements, or built actual businesses, directed instead toward acquiring pixels arranged to trigger attraction responses. The expenditure is voluntary. The expenditure is also shaped by systems designed to extract maximum payment. The psychological manipulation is sophisticated. Limited time banners create urgency. Pity systems create sunk cost commitment. The random acquisition triggers gambling circuits that weren't evolved to handle digital manipulation. The entire architecture optimizes for extracting payment from players whose self-control has been systematically undermined. The industry euphemisms obscure what's happening. Player engagement, monetization mechanics, live service models. The language is clinical. The reality is exploitation of male attraction through female character design, combined with gambling mechanics designed to maximize extraction. The combination is potent enough to fund billion-dollar companies. Direct monetization eliminated the middleman. OnlyFans and its competitors represent the logical endpoint. If male attention toward female sexuality generates value, why insert a product in the middle? Why sell beer adjacent to attractive women when you could sell access to the women directly? The platforms that enable direct creator monetization simply removed inefficiencies from an ancient transaction. Social media became the funnel. Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. Platforms where creators could build audiences through suggestive content that stopped just short of platform violations. The followers accumulated. The followers got directed to subscription platforms where the content continued without restriction. The social platforms provided free marketing. The subscription platforms provided the actual monetization. Streaming revealed the economics clearly. Female streamers on Twitch, YouTube, and other platforms understood that appearance drove viewership beyond any content quality. The hot tub meta on Twitch wasn't accident or coincidence. It was streamers discovering that revealing clothing in inflatable pools generated views that gaming skill couldn't match. The platform resisted briefly, then capitulated. The economics were too clear. Traditional career paths got abandoned. Women who would previously have pursued conventional employment discovered that monetizing male attention directly produced income their other options couldn't match. The choice was economically rational even when socially complicated. Why work a job when you can earn multiples of that income through a camera and a subscription platform? The competition for male resources intensified. The explosion of supply creates a new dynamic. Male attention and male money face competing claims from every direction. The game wants your payment for characters. The streaming platform wants your subscription for access. The advertising system wants your attention for products. The direct creators want your subscription for content. Every direction presents stimuli designed to capture your response. The competition is for finite resources. Men have limited attention. Men have limited money. The systems competing for both have unlimited appetite. The saturation of sexualized content across every platform and product category represents competing extraction attempts. Each system wants to capture the share of male attention and spending that other systems also want. The aggregate extraction is substantial. A man might not notice any single payment. The subscription here, the gacha pull there, the premium purchase somewhere else. But aggregated across all the systems competing for his resources, the total extraction often represents significant percentage of disposable income. Death by 1,000 cuts, each cut individually small, collectively major. The conditioning compounds across exposure. None of these systems operates in isolation. The advertising conditions response patterns from childhood. The games reinforce those patterns through adolescence. The platforms exploit established patterns through adulthood. Each layer builds on previous layers. The man responding to a thumbnail at 30 was trained to respond by advertisements he saw at 10. The cumulative effect shapes expectations. What women should look like, how attractiveness correlates with worth, the implicit exchange rate between male attention and female appearance. These expectations don't emerge from nowhere. They're constructed through decades of exposure to systems optimized to create exactly those expectations, because those expectations drive the spending the systems depend on. The shaping is often invisible to the shaped. The man who believes his preferences are natural, his own authentic responses to objective reality, doesn't recognize those preferences as constructed. But the preferences that conveniently align with what corporations want him to prefer deserve at least skeptical examination. The feminist critique has partial validity. Critics who argue that this system objectifies women aren't entirely wrong. The system does reduce women to visual stimuli optimized for male response. The character design that prioritizes attractiveness over functionality does treat female bodies as products. The thumbnail that uses female appearance to capture clicks does commodify that appearance. Where the critique fails is in proposing alternatives. The system exists because it works. The games that don't sexualize characters generate less revenue. The thumbnails that don't feature attractive women get fewer clicks. The advertising that doesn't leverage sexual attention captures less attention. The market rewards what works. What works is what the critique opposes. The tension remains unresolved. Ideologically, many people believe sexualization is problematic. Economically, sexualization is profitable. The economic incentives overwhelm the ideological preferences. Companies that prioritize ideology over profit get outcompeted by companies that don't. The selective pressure runs in one direction only. This isn't endorsement, it's observation. The systems will continue regardless of whether they receive moral approval. Understanding them clearly serves anyone who wants to navigate them with awareness, rather than being navigated by them unknowingly. The individual response options are limited. Awareness provides some protection. The man who recognizes a thumbnail as trigger bait can sometimes pause before clicking. The man who understands gacha mechanics as gambling can sometimes resist the pull. The recognition doesn't eliminate the response, but creates space between stimulus and action, where choice can operate. Behavioral design can reduce vulnerability. Not having payment methods attached to gaming platforms, setting spending limits in advance, avoiding platforms entirely where the extraction is most aggressive. These structural interventions protect against moments when willpower fails, because willpower often does fail against systems optimized to defeat it. Philosophical reframe offers different leverage. The man who genuinely doesn't value what these systems sell won't be extracted from as easily. But genuinely changing what you value is difficult. The preferences were installed early. They've been reinforced continuously. Deciding to value differently is easy, actually valuing differently is hard. Social support provides additional resource. Men who discuss these patterns with each other develop shared resistance. The normalization of unlimited spending gets challenged when spending gets discussed openly. The isolation that enables extraction, each man thinking his behavior is unique, breaks down when patterns get compared. The system isn't going anywhere. The forces maintaining the system are too powerful for reversal. Too much money flows through the extraction mechanisms. Too many industries depend on continuing it. Too many people accept it as normal because it's been normal their entire lives. The conditioning that enables the system also enables its perpetuation. New technologies will intensify rather than moderate. AI-generated imagery will produce infinite sexualized content at zero marginal cost. Virtual reality will offer immersion that flat screens can't match. Brain-computer interfaces will eventually enable stimulation that bypasses external presentation entirely. Each technological advance will be deployed to capture male attention more effectively than previous technologies permitted. The extraction will continue until something fundamental shifts. What that shift might be remains unclear. Perhaps economic collapse that reduces disposable income. Perhaps technological change that redirects attention. Perhaps cultural evolution that modifies the underlying response patterns. But within any foreseeable time frame, the system will expand rather than contract. The understanding serves something even without escape. Seeing clearly has value independent of changing what's seen. The man who understands his own conditioning experiences his responses differently. The compulsion doesn't necessarily disappear, but its mechanical quality becomes visible. The puppet can see the strings even if it can't cut them. The seeing produces questions. Is this desire authentic or manufactured? Is this spending reflecting my values or values installed for extraction purposes? Is this attention going where I want it or where billion-dollar optimization systems directed it? The questions don't have easy answers, but asking them differs from never asking them. The autonomy that remains, within constraints the system imposes, might be the only autonomy available. You can't escape the advertising. You can't unsee the character designs. You can't remove the conditioning that decades of exposure installed. But you can know what's happening. You can make choices with awareness rather than without it. You can resist where resistance is possible even while acknowledging that comprehensive resistance isn't possible. The collective dimension matters more than individual. Individual escape from the system is difficult enough to approach impossible for most, but collective awareness might produce collective response. Men who recognize their shared exploitation might develop shared resistance. The normalization that enables extraction depends on each man believing his behavior is unique and natural, rather than engineered and common. Conversations like this one serve that function. Not as solution, these words won't dissolve the machinery, but as contribution to awareness that might, aggregated across many minds, produce something the individual awareness cannot. The system depends on invisibility. Visibility threatens it, not fatally, but meaningfully. The younger generations face greater exposure with less preparation. The boys encountering these systems today face optimization far more sophisticated than previous generations encountered. The extraction will be more effective, the conditioning will be more thorough, unless something intervenes, unless awareness reaches them before the conditioning completes. The framing of this as men's issue requires nuance. Women participate in the system too. The creators who monetize male attention aren't victims. They're participants making choices within the same economic structure. The extraction flows from men to women in many of these mechanisms. Describing men as purely exploited ignores that women bear costs too, primarily in terms of how the system shapes expectations about what women should be. The system exploits everyone in different ways. Men get exploited for money and attention. Women get exploited for image and performance. Both are being shaped by forces designed to maximize value extraction. The shared exploitation might be foundation for shared resistance rather than gendered conflict. But acknowledging shared exploitation doesn't mean both sides experience equal costs. The financial extraction from men is direct and measurable. The psychological and social costs to women participating in the system are real but less quantifiable. Comparison of costs produces conflict rather than clarity. Better to recognize that the system serves neither group's authentic interests while serving economic interests enormously. The ancient dynamics meet modern engineering. Male response to female sexuality isn't new, it's as old as the species. What's new is the engineering, the systematic optimization of that response for value extraction. The vulnerability was always present. The exploitation was always possible. What changed is the precision, the scale, and the algorithmic sophistication of the exploitation. Understanding this distinction matters. The response isn't something to be ashamed of. The response is biological reality that exists independent of any individual's choice. The exploitation of that response is the problem, but the problem lies in the exploitation, not in the underlying response being exploited. Self-hatred doesn't serve resistance. The man who feels ashamed of his responses doesn't resist better. He resists worse because shame produces hiding rather than addressing. The response can be acknowledged without celebration and without shame. It simply exists. The question is what happens around its existence. The economic analysis reframes the moral framing. Moralizing about this system tends to miss the point. The system doesn't persist because of moral failure. It persists because of economic incentive. The people operating within it, the advertisers, the game designers, the platform creators, the individual monetizers, aren't evil. They're responding to incentives that reward exactly what they're doing. Moral condemnation that ignores economic reality produces only frustration. The condemnation doesn't change incentives. The incentives continue producing the behavior the condemnation targets. The gap between moral stance and practical reality generates outrage without generating change. Economic analysis suggests different approaches. What would change incentives? What would make extraction less profitable? What would shift the calculus that currently rewards sexualized optimization? These questions might produce actionable answers where moral condemnation produces only expressed preference. The answers aren't obvious. Perhaps nothing available can shift incentives enough to matter. Perhaps the system has achieved self-sustaining momentum that no intervention can redirect. But the questions themselves are better than the moral outrage that typically replaces them. The personal accounting becomes available. A man can inventory his own extraction. Where has his money gone that these systems directed? What has he purchased because systems engineered his desire? What would that money have become if directed elsewhere? The accounting doesn't produce different past. It might produce different future. The calculation often disturbs. Money spent on gacha characters. Money spent on subscriptions to creators. Money spent on products because attractive women appeared in advertisements. Aggregated across years, the amount is substantial, directed toward the system rather than toward goals that would have served him better. The future direction doesn't require perfection. Complete escape from the system isn't realistic. Some extraction will continue regardless of awareness, but reduction is possible. Redirecting even portion of the extracted resources toward self-serving purposes represents victory that complete resistance isn't required to achieve. The awareness carries forward. Seeing once doesn't mean seeing permanently. The conditioning is strong, the systems are sophisticated, the moments of clarity compete against years of installation and continuous reinforcement. The seeing fades, the conditioning reasserts, the extraction resumes. Maintenance of awareness requires intention. Returning to the analysis, remembering what was understood, discussing with others who understand. The awareness isn't a one-time achievement. It's a practice that requires repetition against forces constantly working to reinstall the oblivion that enables extraction. Community supports this practice. The man trying to maintain awareness alone faces harder work than the man with others maintaining awareness together. The shared understanding provides mutual reminder. The conversation itself constitutes resistance. The isolation that enables extraction breaks down through connection that acknowledges what's happening. The final frame crystallizes. Male sexuality is exploited systematically for profit. The exploitation is engineered, optimized and delivered through every platform and product category. The conditioning that enables the exploitation began in childhood and continues through every exposure to content designed to trigger response. The extraction that follows is predictable, measurable and massive in aggregate. Understanding this doesn't solve it. The systems are too entrenched, the incentives too powerful, the conditioning too deep. But understanding changes the experience of what can't be escaped. The puppet that sees the strings operates differently than the puppet that doesn't. Not freely, but differently. The question becomes what to do with the seeing. Direct resources differently where possible. Discuss with others to break isolation. Protect younger men from conditioning still being installed. Maintain awareness against constant pressure to forget. These actions don't defeat the system. They represent the resistance available within it. The exploitation continues regardless. This analysis won't stop it. Your awareness won't stop it. But awareness might redirect some portion of what you would otherwise have surrendered. Might reduce the extraction even while unable to eliminate it. Might constitute partial victory in a conflict where total victory isn't available. More content on understanding systems designed to exploit, maintaining awareness against conditioning pressure, and redirecting resources towards serving yourself rather than serving extractors exists. Links available for those pursuing clearer seeing. For those who've calculated their own extraction, share the numbers. Share what you realized you'd spent. Share where those resources went that systems directed. The sharing itself resists the isolation that enables extraction. Others benefit from knowing they're not alone in what they've experienced. The conditioning is real, the extraction is real, the awareness is also real. What you do with that awareness determines whether it serves you or just makes you more uncomfortable while the extraction continues anyway. Choose usefulness over mere discomfort. Make the seeing serve something, or don't, but recognize the choice you're making.